I'm Karen McBride. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about the job market. We're barely into the new year, and already we're seeing very grim economic reports. Nationally, unemployment is at 7.2%, which is the highest it's been in more than a decade. And the numbers are expected to rise as companies brace for an even more serious recession. Here to talk about that today and what that means to the Hudson Valley is Ron Filante. Ron is an associate professor of finance at Pace University. Ron, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start by talking about a little what this means in the Hudson Valley, where we are right now, and certainly no one can predict where we're going to be, but as I said before, we are realizing that this is a much more serious economic situation than anyone had predicted. So let's start by talking about that.
Well, you're right. The predictions from a year ago have been put aside and replaced by grimmer predictions, and that process will probably continue a bit. I think people are finally now getting accustomed to thinking of 10% unemployment as a destination, and probably you'll be hearing people referring to this phase of the cycle with the word depression instead of using the word recession. Whereas a year ago we were toying with the idea of whether it was actually going to be a recession or just a slowdown in the rate of growth. People were talking about a soft landing, for example. So that particular controversy has been settled. We are in fact heading for a very serious downturn, probably the worst since certainly the 70s, although not so much like the 70s, but certainly the worst since then. And each quarter will certainly bring GDP news. It will tell us how serious the production downturn is, but each week brings employment news in terms of initial claims, and each month brings unemployment rate news. And so far all of them have been miserable, and it has a psychological effect, and I think that's as strong on people's minds and from day to day and between data, as strong a data point as anything. When you see this horrible news out there, you tend to feel it, even if you're still working, and even if ostensibly things haven't really changed in your life.
And as you have pointed out to us, that 7.2% national number is the people that are filing for unemployment claims. That does not count those that, as you said, may be discouraged and just are out of work but are not looking, and also some part-time folks as well, correct?
Yes, like any rate, it's a fraction, and the numerator of that fraction means that you're in the labor force seeking work but not able to find it. So that people who are either leaving or have left the labor force are not counted as being unemployed. They are discouraged workers. And people who do this for a living, analyze data from the Department of Labor, claim that there's an extra 2 or 3% who would come into the labor force and work were their jobs available. So we say 7.2, they say 10 or so percent already. And there's no question about the fact that both of those numbers are going to go up in the next probably year. We're probably talking about 12 months worth of worsening unemployment rates, worsening numbers of people discouraged, and as you pointed out, people seeking full-time work but only able to get part-time work. And of course there are those other people who depend on overtime to make their nut, and they're not getting the overtime hours that they once were. So it's a very complicated exercise, reading tea leaves of the numbers, but the pain is out there.